Welcome to the Especially for Athletes podcast, where we explore essential principles that empower athletes to learn life's most valuable lessons through sports.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Especially for Athletes podcast. We are so excited to be joined by Doug Meacham, the head basketball coach of Harriman High School there and former University great. I'm going to call you a great because that team went to the Final Four, made it all the way to the final game. And we've done a podcast with Doug in the past. Dustin, you'll remember his story, just a remarkable story. Doug, you were cut, if I remember correctly, your junior year of high school. Is that when you were cut?
Yeah, it was definitely a huge part in my life of just learning how to deal with something was taken away from you. And yeah, just a big impact on my life for sure.
Yeah. And we did a whole episode on that, the way that your mom reacted when you came home, just an incredible mother who said, well, what are you going to do to get so good that they can't cut you next year? Right. And so just an amazing story. We'll put the link to that episode in the show notes here so that anyone listening to that could go back and listen to that story and how you went from getting cut your junior year of high school to sitting there on the sidelines playing mostly a practice player role, but still with one of the greatest coaches in college basketball history, one of the most unique, Rick Majerus, and going all the way to the final game. And that's a unique journey, but we delved all into that the first time that we met with you. However, we didn't have Dustin on there with us on that one. So Dustin, as you've got to know Doug, you've become great friends with him and you've listened to that episode. Any thoughts you would share with parents and coaches about Doug Meacham and his story there?
Well, I've known Doug, several schools ago, and he was coaching Coach, 2 schools ago, and you were at American Fork High School. And I knew him back then when I was a little bit more involved in basketball, actually myself, and got to know him then. And when he was coaching down south from where we live for 4 hours or so, we were working with the school that he was at. In fact, he's probably the reason the program came into that school. And again, now working at Harriman because of Doug. And so guys like that, coaches like that, who really practice what they preach, they don't just talk how important it is to do these other things. They actually live it. That's how Doug is. And that's why we had him back, on the podcast the first time and then back a second time. And since then, I've met with Doug, I don't know, half a dozen times. We've probably gotten together and ended up chatting about something. He's let me speak to his team. So I think I am super comfortable having him speak to our team, the E4A team, the kids here in E4A. And anybody who gets a chance to play for Doug is lucky. He's respected around the state in that basketball world. The coaches respect him, and he's been around a while, and I'm sure will continue to coach and impact a lot of good lives, or a lot of young men's lives. So Doug, it's always good to have you on, and we appreciate you taking time to join us.
But thank you. I really appreciate you guys and all that you do for high school sports, and I'm honored to always have you come into the school and visit with our team and our programs. And as a school counselor, the impact that has on behind the scenes, is just a lot. I've been lucky enough to have my boys involved in the program, and I want them there every single time. They get a chance to learn some of the life lessons that your program and you teach that just helps them the rest of their life.
Well, thanks, Doug.
Well, we appreciate it, Doug. And we had an opportunity to golf together at our annual tournament down at Black Desert, beautiful Black Desert Resort down there. If anyone hasn't visited Black Desert, Reef Capital is one of our sponsors there. They put on a tournament to help us fund our program every year. They're very generous in that way, and it is an incredible place to golf. But I love it because of the interactions I get to have in addition to the great golf. I got to ride in a cart with Doug. And Doug, you and I started to have this conversation about some comments that Scottie Scheffler made, pro golfer, right after he had just won a major. And he made some comments that we're going to listen to here together and then just talk about the implications of his comments to high school kids, to parents who are listening to this, to coaches, and maybe some things that they should consider. And I think it's really a wonderful thing. So I'm going to play those comments here, and let's just take them in as we listen together, and then we'll share our thoughts on it after. Okay? So here's Scottie Scheffler.
It feels like you work your whole life to celebrate winning a tournament for like a few minutes. It only lasts a few minutes, that kind of euphoric feeling. And I like to win the Byron Nelson Championship at home. I literally worked my entire life to become good at golf, to have an opportunity to win that tournament. And you win it, you celebrate, get to hug my family, my sister's there. It's such an amazing moment. And then it's like, okay, now what are we going to eat for dinner? You know, life goes on. Is it great to be able to win tournaments and to accomplish the things I have in the game of golf? Yeah. I mean, it brings tears to my eyes just to think about, because it's literally worked my entire life to become good at this sport, and to have that kind of sense of accomplishment, I think is a pretty cool feeling. You know, to get to live out your dreams is very special. But at the end of the day, it's like, I'm not out here to inspire the next generation of golfers. I'm not here to inspire somebody else to be the best player in the world, because what's the point? You know, this is not a fulfilling life. It's fulfilling from the sense of accomplishment, but it's not fulfilling from a sense of like the deepest, you know, places of your heart. You know, there's a lot of people that make it to what they thought was going to fulfill them in life, and then you get there and all of a sudden you get to number one in the world, and then they're like, what's the point? And, you know, I really do believe that, because, you know, what is the point? You're like, why do I want to win this tournament so bad? That's something that I wrestle with on a daily basis. It's like showing up at the Masters every year. It's like, why do I want to win this golf tournament so badly? Why do I want to win the Open Championship so badly? I don't know. Because if I win, it's going to be awesome for about 2 minutes. And then we're going to get to the next week, and it's going to be like, hey, you won 2 majors this year. How important is it for you to win the FedEx Cup playoffs? And it's just like, we're back here again, you know? So we really do. We work so hard for such little moments. And, you know, I'm kind of a sicko. I love putting in the work. I love being able to practice. I love getting out to live out my dreams. But at the end of the day, sometimes I just don't understand the point. You know, because I don't know if I'm making any sense or not, but am I not? It's just one of those deals. You know, I love the challenge. I love being able to play this game for a living. It's one of the greatest joys of my life. But does it fill the deepest, you know, wants and desires of my heart? Absolutely not.
What do you find fulfilling?
I mean, I love playing golf. I love being able to compete. I love living out my dreams. I love being a father. I love being able to take care of my son. I love being able to provide for my family out here playing golf. And, you know, every day when I wake up early to go put in the work, you know, my wife thanks me for going out and working so hard. And when I get home, I try and thank her every day for taking care of our son. It's just, you know, that's why I talk about families being my priority, because it really is. You know, I'm blessed to be able to come out here and play golf, but if my golf ever started affecting my home life, or it ever affected the relationship I have with my wife or with my son, you know, that's going to be the last day that I play out here for a living. You know, this is not the be all end all. This is not the most important thing in my life. And that's why I wrestle with, why is this so important to me? Because, you know, I would much rather be a great father than I would be a great golfer. You know, that at the end of the day, that's what's more important to me. When I sit back at the end of the year and, you know, I kind of try to reflect on things, like having that sense of accomplishment from winning the Masters tournament, from winning the PGA Championship, I have a deep sense of gratitude and appreciation for it. But it's just hard to explain how it just doesn't satisfy, is how I would describe it. It's an unsatisfying venture. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is this is not the place to look for your satisfaction. This is something that's where you can have a great appreciation for, and a great a great amount of thankfulness for being able to do this. And it's, I mean, like I said, it's literally one of the most fun things that I can do in my entire life. I love being able to come out here and play golf and compete, but at the end of the day, it's just not what satisfies me, if that makes sense.
So there's Scottie Scheffler. Doug, when you listen to that portion of his post-victory news conference, something struck you about that and made you think of our program. I think you sent us that clip. Tell me why you sent that to us. What do you think that has to do with some high school athletes and coaches and parents? I'd love to know what's on your mind about that.
Yeah, I just think he's an elite in so many different ways. His ability to have the balance. And we're all competitors. We all want to win. And, sometimes people look at it and think it's a weakness that he's not a certain way, but he has a humility about himself. They were asking him about, compare yourself to Tiger Woods. And he just blows it off. And he just understands that, winning is fleeting. And in terms of after the win, all of a sudden they're looking at what's next, and are you ready for the next tournament? And I think it just stood out that the principles that your program emphasizes. He seeks to bless, not impress. He's very resilient. I mean, look how he handled getting put in jail. There's not a better example of that. And he ends up getting the part in the movie about it. He's just so fun. And people like this, they just don't come that very often. And I turn on to watch every time he has a chance to win and be in the tournament, because I want to see something special. But he's just an elite balance, a great person, has a focus with his faith, family, and then golf being third. And I think we've heard a lot of successful coaches and people that are able to take what they learn in sports, able to have that balance in their life. And I think it's something that we're always trying to find, even after we're involved in sports.
Yeah. Dustin, what does that clip and Scottie Scheffler, all of that, what does that make you think about as a high school coach, as the founder of this program? We'd love to know what's on your mind.
Well,
about
I like to hear, he's matured a bunch. If you know Scottie Scheffler, if anybody who likes golf or studies golf, when he first came into golf, he had a little bit of a temper. He would sometimes act out on the course when he made mistakes, like we all do when we're younger. And as he got a little bit older, and especially after he had a family, got married and started to have, his kids and things, he did what most of us do. And you get a little grounded and things make a little more sense. What's most important really becomes most important, or it should at least. In this case, it did. It wasn't golf. It wasn't missing a 6-foot putt anymore. That, as much as that might have stung, that wasn't nearly as important to him as making sure that he spent time with his son when he got done with the round of golf. Where before, and I think athletes, whether you're an adult or a high school athlete, there are other things in our life that we put second, third, and fourth in front of, or behind, the winning. And sometimes you have to be great. You do have to put things in second, third place for a time. And once that time's done, you got to be able to transition into being a dad. In his case, for a kid, it might be going home and being a son or a friend or a brother or sister or something. And that's our win the hour principle. The ability to turn off, okay, I'm no longer a golfer anymore. I'm a dad now. And don't worry about the putt you missed or the tournament you missed. And like he said, I don't feel any different because I won this tournament, he says, right? Like, he wins it, he loses it, whatever, it's his job. But I got a son to go home to and a family to go home to. And when you can get that perspective and that sort of balance, whether you're an athlete or not, right? Whatever you do for a living, that whatever you're passionate about, to have that sort of balance, to be able to compartmentalize, this is a time of my day, but now it's not. I've got other responsibilities and put my full focus into that. That sort of balance, I think, is what's going to make him a professional athlete for a long, long time. Tiger Woods was sort of the opposite of that. Tiger Woods was a grinder. It was, if he missed a 6-foot putt, he'd go make 100 of them, 200 of them after the round and wouldn't go home. He'd turn the lights on and he'd go out there and keep putting. And he would just grind. And his whole life was golf, everything since he was a little kid. And if you look at Tiger's life, they're both great golfers. There's some other areas, though, I would guess in Tiger's life, if you went back and asked him, that maybe if he could have done a couple things a little differently, that maybe things might have been a little better for him. So I think Scottie Scheffler's approach is a much more less risky and more balanced approach. It's not that he doesn't care about golf. It's not that he doesn't practice. It's not that he's not serious about it. He just doesn't let it define who he is, because he realizes he's not a golfer. Something he does. He's a dad and a husband.
How does that become a challenge? You both are coaches and have coached high-level teams that have accomplished a lot. Where do you see this becoming a challenge for high school kids? I'm just curious, like, what are you seeing that where sometimes kids get maybe a little bit out of balance to their detriment?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to be a school counselor and watch the behind the scenes in terms of their academics, when students can have the ability to balance out their time with handling school, it carries over into them being more successful in their sport and in their relationships too. I always kind of tease my players a little bit with their, sometimes some of them have girlfriends, and when it starts to seem like, wait a minute, this is out of balance, where they're always together 100% of the day, it becomes out of whack a little bit. So it's just a constant struggle of learning what's important. Winning the hour is the principle that you guys always talk about. And I remember, I go back to John Calipari in terms of, he would always, his book, Players First, was talked about. He said he gets them in and he wants to have them make mistakes. He wants them to come and start making mistakes in a hurry because they can learn and figure it out. And I think that's, an important part of learning, that balance of managing your mistakes and knowing what they should focus on.
Yeah. Dustin, how about you?
I think in anything, if it's important to recognize that, A, B, C, and D, they're affected by each other. D is affected by A, meaning you're not going to be a great basketball player if, the C and D in your life, whatever that is there's an issue there. It's going poorly. If you have a family issue at home that's getting to be detrimental to your mental health, you won't be at your 100% greatest at the basketball court, right? On the football field, because and nor should you be. I think we would all understand that you're distracted. It's hard. It's going to be hard to be completely focused for a couple hours every day if you've got a dad who's struggling with something, right? A mom who's sick, a divorce that's happening, your girlfriend just broke up with you, or she said something about you right before the game online, and that's out there, and I can't. I got to get to that, but I got to go to practice. So yes, these other areas of our life, they transition, just like sports transitions into how well sometimes kids study and prepare for a test, or the energy or mental, energy they maybe have at the house. When you come home from a game that you lost, you're probably going to be acting differently than you would have before. And we're all trying to balance that, as coaches, being a dad at home and being a coach, and not bringing work home with us. And right, whether you coach or not, we all battle that. So for a young kid whose minds are still developing, it's their first time dealing with some of these issues, right? Off the court, off the field. When those issues pop up, if they don't have people to help them navigate those, how do we expect them to manage that, right? To put that away and go and play in a game and be completely committed. And we say, give us 100%. Can they? Is it even possible for them to give us 100% if one of these other things is going on? It's their first time dealing with that, and then also having to turn that off and be an athlete if we don't help them. I don't think that's fair. And I think now with some of these things they're dealing with, potentially being on social media, and who's going to read it, and how are they going to see it, and what are they going to think? And just imagine how the wiring of a kid's brain would get, just really messed up, right? And screwy if we as adults don't have the ability to explain to them and talk with them and let them work through it. Scottie Scheffler's having this quote here well into his adult life. Well, a lot of mistakes have been made. He's learned a lot of things before he's gotten to be this grounded. This was not him 10 years ago. But we're talking about 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. They're not ready to handle all this by themselves. As adults, I think we have to do a better job of helping them manage all these things.
Yeah, it makes me think of Adam Hall, head coach of UVU wrestling. He talked about how with his wrestlers, he has the mat, and he actually put a whiteboard right outside the door of his wrestling mat, just as a way to signal, hey, if you have something else on your mind, if you're bringing something else to the mat, write it here on the board and try to intentionally leave it here so we could focus in on the mat. And I think those little things that coaches do, instead of just criticizing or belittling a kid for having a girlfriend, or these emotions are real to the kids, and to think through what are some things I could do to help them in the transition. I think that that's a great question for parents, coaches, and for young athletes, right? Is how can I mentally transition from one thing to another? And what are some things I could do to intentionally say, okay, I'm going into practice now. I'm going to be 100% present at practice. And okay, now I'm going home. What could a coach do to tell his players? I know that I've heard a lot of BYU players talk about how Kalani Sitake is really, really good at this. One of them mentioned that they had just lost. It was the Kansas loss last year. So it was the week after they beat Utah in that very emotional game. Now they're 9-0 and they're coming in and they're playing Kansas and trying to go 10-0, and Kansas isn't having a great year. And then they lose to Kansas, right? And all the players are dejected. And one of them talked about how Coach Sitake talked to the team, and then he said this to them, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, because I don't remember it perfectly, but he said something to the effect of, now look, you are sons, you are brothers, you are husbands, and you are fathers. When you leave this locker room, you could be disappointed here, you could cry, you could be frustrated, you could yell here, but when you go out to them, you be a great husband, a great son, a great brother, and great to the people who love and care about you. So it's those little things I think that coaches could do to help perspective. Maybe we've already hit it, but I just want to ask the two of you, two great coaches, what do? You've both experienced devastating losses or disappointments. What do you do to help your players have that perspective? Or if you look, what could I do? Either of those. I'm curious what coaches could do to help their players have that perspective, that it's a game. And there's more important things.
Well, maybe I'll start. Doug will have more thoughts on this. I wouldn't, first of all, Shad, I would consider Doug, and I'm not saying this, I mean this. I would consider Doug a great coach. He's coached a long time. I've only been a head coach for 5 seasons. 2 of those were losing seasons. So I'm nowhere near in the category of great coach as Doug is. I have had some tough losses, both as a head coach and as an assistant coach and as a player. And the most recent one being this last November, where the high school that I was coaching at, who does not make it to state championships very often, did and had a big lead late in the game and ended up losing in a triple overtime thriller. Really, it was one of the best games. Some people say the best high school state championship game they'd ever seen. Records were broken in, and it was this battle back and forth. But we ended up losing. And I had a son who was a quarterback on that team, and his best friends. And I'd coached those boys since they were 8 and been in a lot of huddles, literally in the huddle with them until 6th grade. I could be on the field and been in a lot of wins with those boys. And in that moment, right when the game ended, I saw some of the coaches were also dejected and were looking for someone to hug. I remember the words came to my head as clear as anything I've had as a coach. Calling a play that I thought was a good play or making a decision. Nothing was clearer than this thought to me that this is when you have to be your very best as a coach right now. This is your very best coaching job is the next 5 minutes. The game's over. But what you do the next 5 minutes is the most important 5 minutes of your coaching career so far. What I meant by that is I had a bunch of kids who were distraught, right? The whole city was at the game, up in the stands. It was a big deal in Spanish Fork City. And as much as I wanted to go and talk with a coach and to kind of commiserate together, find my wife or even find my son, I had, 70, 80 boys I had to get together and tell them, like, this is first of all, it's the last post-game talk you're going to have with all these boys you brought up. This is it. It's over. And secondly, this is their minds. Where are their minds right now? And I don't remember what I said. I know that what I said, I didn't say anything special. I said what I think most coaches would say. You talk about the good and how much you love the boys and how great they're going to be. But months later, I realized something that I think is true. And I'm seeing it right now with some of those boys who are doing some really hard things all over the world, some of them. And that is that the only difference in that game is they got the exact same experience as the other team did, meaning they got to play at Rice-Eccles Stadium and with their whole family and everybody in the city watching on TV. They got 3 overtimes. So they actually got extra time to play. They played extra. They had the same experience as the other team did, except for at the end, they didn't get a chance to hold a trophy that has a 1 on it. It has a 2nd place on it. And they didn't have that celebration that night or that week. It didn't mean that they weren't a good team. It didn't mean that they're not bonded forever. It didn't mean that when they came home, people didn't still appreciate them and love them and think they were great players who did great things, who set records, who, they still had everything except for maybe a ring that says champion and a trophy that says champion. But what they did get from it that the other team didn't get is the lesson of losing, right? Like if 10 years from now, or for some of those boys right now, and the things they're doing at this very second, which are very hard, that the experience of bouncing back and having to go back to school and go back into another sport. Some of them were right into basketball on Monday. Some of them did it the next day, like literally. I mean, they were back into it on Saturday, basketball. They had to move on. And the lesson that they learned from that, honestly, looking back at it now, almost a year later, is probably going to be more valuable for them than winning would have been. The winning would have been great. We would have got together and talked about how we won, but we still get together and talk about how many games we won and how many good times we had and all the great moments and records and everything. And then we have this story that bonds us probably even more of, man, we got just KO'd there in the last couple of minutes of the game. But look at what we're all doing. Anyway, the experiences from losing in the long run is probably going to be more valuable than had they won the game. And trying to bring that perspective to sports as a coach is really hard because you have to believe it yourself, which is hard. I still haven't had a day, Coach is probably the same, and he'll tell you his story, but I don't think I've had a day go by I haven't thought of that game. Something about that game, especially if I'm out and I'll see people that, oh, hey, Coach, and immediately it's, oh, that game, right? You got to rehash it. But anyway, it's just a game. We move on, and hopefully the lesson sticks with the kids. What about you, Coach?
Yeah, there are just some amazing lessons, and you just never prepare for those moments of what are you going to say because, those are some tough moments. I remember losing, being in a locker room at University of Utah. Majerus would say, losing a basketball game is the worst thing that happens to you in your life. You're going to have a successful life. And I don't remember much anything else that was said. And how true is it that that's what happens is we're going to be in those situations and things do have to kind of go your way sometimes to win one. And I just remember losing one as a player. We lost to Bingham. I was at American Fork High School as a player. We lost in the state championship. But coming home on the bus, I was just reminiscing with my friends of this is what it was about, the experience together. And it taught me how much I loved it, and I love being around the game of basketball. But it's tough. It's tough to watch those players bounce back. And I remember early in my years, within the first 5 years, lost a heartbreaker to Orem. It was at American Fork, and it was in an overtime game. And Craig Cusick, hit some big shots down the stretch, and they literally hit a three-quarter court shot to beat what I thought at that time was a really good American Fork team that was ranked number one through the year. One of the biggest gut punches I've had as a coach. To this day, I would swear that the player double dribbled and walked at the same time and then made the shot. I still think about that play every single day. The very next day, Coach Rags Ingersoll, Carl Ingersoll, famous coach at American Fork over the years, came, knocked on my door, boom, just gave me a hug. And, he didn't say much, just came and gave me a hug. And I think that impression was, what do you do to help these players learn and bounce back? You love them and you guide them, because as coaches, we're still figuring it out. We're trying to learn how to bounce back. And there's nothing more satisfying than to watch players have these things happen to them, and then they go on and they're successful. Brendan Bailey was at another team, American Fork. They had Brendan Bailey and I had Spencer Johnson on the same team. And we were favored to go into the state tournament that year and do well. But the very last game of the season, it was a region game. Brendan Bailey goes up and has an amazing block up on a guy and then hit his hand on the ball so hard that it broke his hand. He came over to me and said, "Coach, I think I broke my hand." And then, another gut punch in the spirit of, in the arena of competition the day before going into a state tournament. But yet to watch this young man, Brendan Bailey, go on and serve a church mission and go on to Marquette and do well and be guarding Jean Morant in the NCAA tournament down the road. He's got a beautiful young family. He's playing overseas in China. He learned those things. And I think sometimes as maybe a seasoned coach, I've seen it enough where you understand that the losses are just part of it, but to watch these young men figure out how to move on to the next play and how to say, well, you got to get up and go. So some amazing lessons for sure.
Thank you both for letting us in there. Dustin, do you have another thought?
No, that was Doug summarized it perfectly.
Yeah. I love that the coaches that I have that really stick out to me in my life. It's funny because they were tough. They demanded a lot of us, but I knew that coach loved me. And those are the ones I'm still in touch with to this day. And so on the other hand, those that it felt like I was a tool to help them accomplish their goals. And as soon as I was not useful, I was discarded. Those ones are the ones that now that I'm an adult, I don't have ill feelings or anything toward them, but I don't respect them. I don't long to be around them. My high school basketball coach was a Doug Meacham. He had us, inner city. It was a rough neighborhood. He would have us over to his house every single Friday night after a home game, and his wife would make us fresh lemonade, and we would watch the game tape together, and we could bring our friends and play pool at his house. And it's funny, I remember those things way more than I remember the X's and O's or anything like that. And when COVID hit and he's living in Minnesota, we had a team get together on Zoom just to make sure our coach wasn't lonely in Minnesota because he moved there after he retired. That comes from loving a coach, but really it comes from a coach loving us, right? And I train teachers and do that for a profession. And I would often, when we would hire a new teacher, I would say, I don't care whether it's a coach or a high school teacher or a church teacher. I just want you to tell me who is the teacher who had the most powerful impact on your life as a young person. And they would always reflect, and I'd say, okay, you got the name of the coach, the teacher in your mind. And I'd say, tell me, what was it about them that allowed them to impact your life so much to where their name came to your mind? I am telling you guys, and this is not hyperbole, 100% of the time, they mentioned two things. They loved me, and they were passionate about the sport, the subject, whatever it is. They loved me, and they were passionate about what they were teaching me. And I just thought how true that is. Like, as you two reflect upon those coaches that had that impact on you, I look back and I'm like, man, Coach Phelps loved basketball and he loved me. Coach Bothwell loved baseball and he loved me. Coach Herbold loved baseball and he loved me. Like, I could reflect upon those and they had a huge impact on my life. And so as coaches kind of think of what's the most important thing, and Dustin, I would say you are a great coach, man. It's about process, not podiums, Dustin. You should go back and listen to a few things here. I had 2 losing seasons. Come on.
I've coached a lot of kids. I have done that with all of this, and I hope that some goods come from it. But unfortunately, the wins and losses is part of it. I wanted to, maybe this is another podcast, and I know we're out of time here, but you said something, Shad, that I wanted to get both of your guys' thoughts on. Maybe we just use this in a social media post or something, but you said passion and they loved me are the 2 things that the kids remember the most. Do you think that those things are contagious? Is love in a team or from a coach or a classroom or something? We want kids to be kind to others. We want them to look out for each other. It's kind of maybe at the core of especially for athletes is we want these kids who have the spotlight on them to go out of their way to be a little extra thoughtful and caring of people. That's one of the arms of especially for athletes, right? In the hallways and stuff. With the idea being that if they would do it, it might creep into the rest of the school. In other words, be contagious. Make it cool to be cool, right? Cool to be kind, cool to be friendly. And I think on the passion side, apathy is contagious, and so is to apathetic people. To high motivated people, apathy is like, you avoid it like the plague. You can't stand to be around it. But passion, I think it is. So I wanted your guys' thought. When you have a passionate kid on your team, it seems to leak into other kids, right? Or a coach. Is that something that's really important? Coach or Shad, I know all the teams we played on a team. We had guys that were this way and a coach that was a certain style. Doug, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been fortunate to be around some amazing young men, some great players, and even coached against some amazing players. I remember listening to a bus driver talk to me about one of his players. And I can say Lone Peak now because I'm not at American Fork. I can say the word. I don't have to say the school up north. But when I was coaching against some of those great teams they had at that time, the bus driver just shared some information about Tyler Haws. He says, Tyler Haws would, after the bus, kids would come off the bus. He was the senior, and instead of, that ego of the senior gets off first, he was the guy that would pick up and clean up after his team got off and made sure the bus was clean when they left before the game. Brett Kinghorn was on a podcast the other day. He's a referee for many years, and he brings up Tyler Haws and how he handled hard things and calls. He never complained about a call. And you can't question that kid's passion. You can't question Scottie Scheffler's passion, because even though it may be quiet and humble, I know and just believe that spills over into those teams that they were on to make them great. And I think that's the difference from being a good team to a great team is that quiet, powerful leadership that is going to do it first.
And maybe going full circle here with Scottie Scheffler and how it led to this place where we are now, where I didn't really expect it to lead, but it's been an awesome discussion, is that perspective that Scottie Scheffler shared at the beginning of this podcast. If that's true within us, Dustin, when you're saying, yeah, we lost this state championship game in a devastating way, but these next 5 minutes are actually the most important 5 minutes of my season. It's not about wins and losses. It's about process. It's about learning. It's about relationships. If we have that truly within us, that it's not just about wins and losses, there are way more important things in life than that, then it brings about those Tyler Haws-like behaviors. You become solid men and women if you have proper perspective. If you have a coach or a parent or you are a player who doesn't have that perspective, then you don't handle things the right way. I just think it's a really good thing to be grounded. And Coach, I had this thing come to mind when it comes to passion and love. And Dustin, I know this is a good discussion because I don't want to stop it. So hopefully those who are listening don't want to stop listening to it. So for me, in my experience, having a loving coach does not mean that coach is not demanding, that coach does not get on your tail and yell at you and expect a lot of you and be disappointed when you're not your best self. And so to me, a loving coach is not just all sunshines and rainbows and come here. Oh, you false started again. Come give me a hug. I love you more than anything. Sometimes I had a great mentor in my life who said something one time about raising children. I love you enough to let you hate me for a while, right? And that's a really good parenting principle. I also think it's a coaching principle. You're demanding things. You're holding them to a standard. And when they get older, they start to realize, wow, Coach Meacham, Coach Smith really loved me. That's why they demanded a lot of me. The reason why I bring this up, Doug, is you play for Coach Majerus. And if we were to poll the people on this podcast, say, okay, if you listen to this podcast, describe Rick Majerus in one word. I mean, intense. And, he was a very intense coach. But as we've had discussions about Coach Majerus, I've felt within you a deep appreciation and love for Coach Majerus. Can you tell us passion and love? How do those things relate to Rick Majerus?
Yeah, he absolutely loved the game. There was no question about that. He was a savant and he was a genius of the game. I think his balance in life and family was probably off a little bit, but I think what was special about those years, the guys really learned to galvanize each other and love each other. The assistant coaches took on huge roles of showing love maybe differently than coach. But you hear the stories of him, when Keith Van Horn's father passed away, of him taking him out and just spending that time with him. Myself as a walk-on, he treated me unbelievably well and helped me and guided me and gave me great direction and ultimately, kind of guided my path of where I am today. But yes, his way of doing it was a little bit old school and different, but you knew and didn't question that he cared about winning and he cared about his players. And it was a little bit of that tough love for sure. But, I've got a player this last year, Malcolm, who was at the Naval Academy. And, I'm not a kind of coach that probably prepared him for that and what he was going to face there. But I think it's important that the players, realize, the love's there, and even though it comes across different sometimes.
Yeah. Dustin, what would you say to that?
That's really important, though. I remember us saying something about this in a post, and I got something about, I think it was a comment we had made about when coaches are getting on you and riding you, take that as a compliment, really. It's because they see that they wouldn't waste their breath. Most coaches, good coaches, I don't think, would waste their breath on you if they didn't think you could do it. It's when they become apathetic to you and you do something wrong and they don't coach it up because they just feel like he's not going to get it anyway. Right? I've tried. That's when you should be worried. Well, somebody reached out on social media. It was a quarterback who I trained with Quarterback Elite, who plays at another school 100 miles from here, and said, I agree with everything you said. If that coach who's getting on you and riding you and things really does care about you. If not, it's awful for that kid. Right. And it's true. I think it is. And that's hard, I think, as a coach, to let a kid know that, you really, you do care about him, but you also are, as a competitive person and as somebody who wants to see that kid be good, that there's better in him. And sometimes the way that you get that out comes across as you don't like that kid, right? The way you say it, the tone of your voice, I ask the kids all the time, please just hear the words I'm saying, not so much read into my body language and sometimes how I say it, right? Mm-hmm. But you do have to make sure that afterwards you show that player that you care about him. If you jump a kid or get on a kid, it's the most important part of the coaching isn't that message you shared with them. It's the message you share with them after practice when you say, hey, come here. And you say, hey, you know why I got on you there, right? Did it make sense? Did you understand it? All right. Hey, we're good. I love you, right? You're a stud. If you have any questions, come talk to me. Had a good practice. Tomorrow's going to be even better. You fist bump them, right? And that, I think, is the kid. As an athlete, that's what I would want, right? When a coach would do that to me, I was like, no, coach me. I had a kid last year, and again, I had a pretty dang good team. I said some things at a practice last year to a player that I've never said before. I lost it. I snapped on a kid who was a captain for me. And I snapped at something because he didn't come down hard on a play. He didn't show the aggression I needed. And I knew that there was going to come a time in a game where we were going to get away with the way he was playing against other teams. But later in the year, we wouldn't get away with that against better teams. And I had to have him do it a certain way. Not enough to win this week's game, but enough to win later in the season. And I snapped. And I said some things that right after I said it, I knew, you idiot, you're better than that. I can't believe you did that. So immediately, practice was still going. I had to pull him aside and I said, hey, I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. And he looked at me and he said, Coach, we're good. I want you to coach me like that. I have to do better. I need that. Coach, I love you. We're good. Like he was the one. And when he said that, that's when you're like, I got it. Like I got a squad, right? Like we're good. Like I got a team. Like, thank you. And it's hard to get those, but I would say to any coaches listening, in my experiences, coaching sports on teams, I've coached, in football total, everything I've done as an assistant and had, close to 300 games. And I've coached as many quarterback training sessions with kids as I think anybody in the country. So I've been around these kids a lot. They want to be driven and pushed. And if they know you really do love them, but you have to make sure you really show that you do. You can't be just lip service. They got to know it. Right. And they know it when you put your arm around them and when you stick up for them. In a game, don't yell at your players. Right. I mean, yell at them to try hard and stuff. But if they miss a shot, they missed a shot. That's part of the game. Don't yell at a kid for missing a shot or dropping a pass. It happens. Right. Was it the right shot? Right, coach? Or did he hit the right shot and he just missed it? Okay. Right. When you hear coaches say tackle or catch it or, well, come on, coach. The kid meant to make the tackle. Right. Hit the ball. Well, coach, he didn't mean to miss it when he swung the bat. Like, teach him how to hit it. But anyway, I'm rambling a little bit, but I think that's critical that the boys really, or the girls, whoever it is you're coaching, you have to earn that a little bit, then that respect and love if you want to get on them and have it be accepted by them. Otherwise, they can despise it and push back, and you can, I think, have it be counterproductive and find out later you have a player who really doesn't care for you at all.
One thing that comes to mind is something that you said, Dustin, at the beginning of this, that 5 minutes after the state championship loss was a really important moment of that year. I think sometimes coaches can, after players win a big game or pull one out or whatever, that's the natural time. Like, I love you guys. Man, I love you. This is so fun to coach you. I think one of the ways we can help young people understand that we really do love and appreciate them more than the game, more than the wins, more than that, is during those losses, where during that time after you get on them when they're not being successful, it's one thing like, man, I love you. Great block, great pass. I love you. Great shot. You have ice water in your veins. Great shot. That's awesome. And that stuff's good too. But I think those moments of failure, when coaches handle it the right way, when parents handle it the right way, I remember the most dejected I've ever felt in my life. Dustin, I've shared this before, but as a sophomore playing on the varsity basketball team, 14 years old, got fouled shooting a three-pointer, got called off the bench to come in the game because we had fouled the guy. We were down 1 with like 5 seconds left. We thought he was going to hit both free throws. We would be down 3, and that's kind of what I did, especially as a sophomore. And I got fouled shooting a three-pointer at the buzzer and had 3 free throws to make 2 or 3 to win it, 2 to tie it, 1 to lose it, and I made 1. I mean, it's still to this moment, like sharing that as a 48-year-old man, I still feel some of the emotions of that, right? And it was a big semifinal of a big tournament. Those moments when a kid feels like everyone in the world hates me, everyone, like all the fans, my teammates, I didn't miss those free throws on purpose. In fact, I went on and set a school record for a little while in free throw percentage, right? Things like that. That's not who I was. I did choke in the moment. The way a coach handles that with a player is so important. And just to have a coach put his arm around me and say, hey, he said this to me. He said, if that were to happen tomorrow, you would be the one I wanted at the line. And just that moment for me was more important than my dad saying something to me, than a girl in the stand saying, oh, don't even care. You look good in your shorts. None of that.
You never had that. Stop it.
Whatever, dude. I got legs, man. I got legs for days, Dustin. That's the one thing that I've held on. I'm just kidding. No, that moment with my coach where he said, if this happened tomorrow, I would want you at the line, was so impactful for me. And so I do think I'm grateful for the way this podcast went with 2 coaches that work with so many young people. When we have that Scottie Scheffler perspective, it allows us to be the people we need to be, both as players, coaches, parents, when we realize what this is all about. And I'm grateful it went this direction. I don't think we could be the coaches, the parents, the players we need to be unless we have that proper perspective about where sports and outcomes in sports ranks in the importance of things. And life lessons from sports will always be more important than accomplishments in sports. So, any closing thoughts?
I don't know. Doug?
No, a quote that's been ringing out, relationships are more important than results, has always been something that I've remembered, and that's what it's about. I've been lucky to have so many contacts with assistant coaches, great administrators, and then the players, just it's a special and sacred time that I've had to be able to spend with these young men. And, it's just, I don't take it for granted. And I think Scottie Scheffler, so fun to listen to him. He just continually says, I am grateful that I get to do what I love, a game that I love, and I've worked so hard for it. But that being grateful is something that I hope that I can continue to strive for. And I'm grateful to be able to get to meet great guys like you and other coaches that are out there just grinding and trying to make a difference in helping young people.
Well, thanks, Coach Meacham. Thank you, Coach Smith, for this one. So grateful for your perspective, and thank you all for joining the Especially for Athletes podcast. I think this was a really important podcast and one that causes a lot of reflection in myself as a parent, helping my daughter. She's doing high school tennis right now, and all those things that we do. I think it's really important to reflect upon these things, and so share this podcast with someone who would be blessed by it, and we appreciate you joining the Especially for Athletes podcast. Eyes up. Do the work.
Thank you for joining the Especially for Athletes podcast. To learn more about Especially for Athletes organization, get a copy of our book, The Sportlight, or to bring our program to your team, school, business, or organization, visit us at especiallyforathletes.org.